Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Dixon, and today we've got Paul Allen on the podcast. He is the founder and CEO of Soar.com. You may recognize his name because he is also one of the co-founders of Ancestry.com. So a really cool episode because we dig into Paul's previous career as a founder of 15 different companies since 1990 during the dot-com boom and bust. And we talk a lot about AI and why he thinks Soar.com could actually be even bigger and more impactful than Ancestry.com. So I think you'll get a lot out of this episode. So let's get Paul on the pod. Interested in hearing conversations with private equity leaders, CEOs of private equity-backed companies, and startup entrepreneurs where they share their stories about their career journeys, starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, and the important role that having the right talent plays in building a successful business, then you are in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon. All right, Paul, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being a guest.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
Yeah, no, well, let's jump right in. Maybe give a little bit of an overview to those folks watching and listening about who you are, where you are, and what you're up to right now.
Well, seeing that yesterday was Father's Day, I think the most important fun fact is that I'm a father of 8. I have 5 daughters and 3 sons, and 7 of them did a FaceTime with me for an hour yesterday. It was pretty awesome. I love being a dad, but I also love being a founder of companies. I've been founding companies since 1990, and I think I'm up to 15 or so. Wow. And of course, Ancestry.com is the one that is most well known in the world, but I think Soar.com, which is an AI studio, has a chance to maybe someday overtake Ancestry in how many people know it, love it, and use it.
Yeah, no, when we chatted a few weeks ago when you were on the beach in the Outer Banks. I was like, man, this is cool to talk about a company that I've used the product, right? And I think a lot of people can assimilate to Ancestry and kind of what they've experienced with it and ahas that they found of it. But I guess I always like to know and learn about people's origin stories, about why they start businesses, why they became an entrepreneur. Obviously, you have a very long history of being an entrepreneur. So take us back to the 90s. What about it? Why did you start your first business, and what was that first business? Like, how did you get the bug?
Yeah, I never intended to be a tech entrepreneur. I was going to be an academic, a PhD in Russian studies or Soviet studies. I actually wanted to be a Kremlinologist. But in the 1980s, late 80s, I went to a university lecture. The president of the university talked about gathering up all the knowledge in the world and making it available. Libraries, universities, the purpose of these institutions is to gather up truth and make it available. And my oldest brother had started a search engine company in the 80s called Folio. And Folio Views was being used by major publishers, accounting publishers, legal publishers. It was eventually acquired by Mead Data Central, the parent company of LexisNexis, which is, of course, the biggest legal database in the world. And so Folio hired me as a peon scanner. I used to run a Ray Kurzweil $40,000 OCR scanning device. That's how I got my start in tech. And a few months in, my friend Steve Barwick offered to teach me how to code. So by 1989 and 90, I was like the top data prep engineer for this electronic publishing search engine company. And that led me and my best friend to start a company. We wanted to put all the best books in the world on Folio Views on CD-ROM. And within a few years, we made the Inc. 500, and we're doing almost $4 million a year in revenue selling libraries of searchable books on CD-ROM. Of course, this was years before Google. Yeah. So, but then that actually, I went to a conference in '95 in San Francisco, and it was an internet conference, and I was realizing that the CD-ROM business model would evaporate in the coming years because all the world's knowledge and content and data would be on the World Wide Web. Now we talk about the cloud all the time. But the light bulb switched on, and I realized that, copyrighted material is hard to get permissions to put on CD-ROM. We had to work with lots of authors and publishing companies. It was really tough. I was in my 20s. And then I realized in 95 that all the world's genealogy data, the birth, marriage, death, divorce, land, property, military records, they're all in the public domain. They're all factual, and they are not copyrighted. And so the internet And public domain genealogy data turned into, oh, why don't we put all that on the internet? We bought a little publishing company called Ancestry that did magazines and reference books. And we launched Ancestry.com in July of 97. And that was just one of the most fun experiences you could imagine. Just put hundreds of millions and then billions of records on the internet, try to help every person on earth discover their family story. What a fun mission. And it was really a quite exciting ride.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all seen the commercials on TV where you see the books at Ellis Island and all that fun stuff, and you can see, and then you can track back people, and then you can like do the test and get the kit right online and figure out that I'm actually more Italian than Irish, which looking at me and having a big red beard, you would think I'd be much more Irish than I am Italian. But it is fascinating to kind of see the where you're from, right? And not have even if your parents thought maybe you had all this lineage, you can see just your history and kind of where your ancestors came from, which
and that we can get a lot of strength when we think about the people that came before us who sacrificed a lot to bring life into the world and to protect and preserve it. Like every one of us have thousands of ancestors just in the last couple hundred years, but millions of ancestors in the last thousands of years. And so it's quite astonishing to be a part of that human story. And then to think about what strengths did I inherit from my ancestors? And all of us did. We inherited incredible strengths and ability to persist and learn and grow and adapt. And so it's actually very important, I think, for young people, especially, to learn their family stories. There was a study out of Emory University that said that the number one predictor of resilience in children is how much they know about their family stories. You can really personalize. Like if your grandfather or grandmother did something remarkable, survived a difficult period of time, or got through the Depression and rebuilt their life, that is part of you too. And so I think I love the Clifton Strengths Assessment. People call it Strengths Finder. For 5 years, I worked at Gallup, and I really hope someday 1 billion people learn their top 5 strengths from the Clifton Strengths Assessment. But I also think 1 billion or more people can draw strength from the stories of their ancestors, the stories of survival and overcoming, and just the sacrifice and the gratitude you feel when you think back on the people who made life possible for you. It really does give you fuel that will help you continue on in the human chain.
Yeah. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is there any like really interesting story or somebody that found an interesting relative or something through Ancestry? I don't know how much information you get on that stuff, but any really cool story about that?
Oh, I get them all the time. People come up with tears in their eyes. They found relatives they didn't know they had, a half sister or a brother. One of my favorites is one of my best friends had a brother who never married. And he went to college. He had a very successful career, but in his 60s, he was kind of lonely. And then through the DNA testing, somebody reached out and said, hey, I think you might be my dad. And it turned out that he had had a fling in college and didn't know that the girl got pregnant. But now he's very, very close to his biological son, I think, who lives in Australia. And it brought meaning to his entire life to think that I'm not alone in my 60s. I have a biological son. They're so much alike. Apparently, they just really can't get enough of talking to each other and philosophizing and intellectualizing life. And it just brought meaning to his life to know that he had had a son.
That's interesting. Yeah. Some people would maybe not want to find that out, but that's obviously for him in his like life and point in his life, that would be a welcomed shock, I guess, to know that you've got a son that you didn't know you had from a long time ago.
One of my favorite stories about my own ancestors is I had a great-great-grandfather who joined a church and was going to move to Utah, to the Rocky Mountains, and from Norway.
Okay.
And he had a bunch of kids, and he dreamed before he got on the ship to go across the Atlantic that one of his children would die before he got to Utah. And so on the ship, my great-grandfather, who was 7 years old, took ill and was pronounced dead by the ship's captain. But my great-great-grandfather pleaded and pleaded, don't throw him overseas. He is not the one that died in my dream. And so after about 3 or 4 hours, apparently he revived and he didn't get thrown into the ocean. And then right before they got into Utah, I think they were in Wyoming or the borders of Wyoming and Utah, the tiny little boy, Israel Tellefson, or Israel Israelson, at age 1 or 2 died, and they had to bury him in an unmarked grave. But my great-grandfather survived, and now there's thousands of my cousins who lived because of my great-grandfather's dream.
That's fascinating. Yeah. That's an interesting dream, and then also to have the foresight to just not throw somebody that was pronounced dead overboard. That's pretty crazy. I'm sure we could talk about Ancestry for the entire length of the podcast, but I do want to kind of pivot a little bit to SOAR. So, you've been an entrepreneur for a long time. Obviously, you co-founded a business that a lot of people have heard about, and obviously has done quite well in its own right. Why go again? Why kind of start another business, and then maybe let's dig into SOAR a little bit more.
Well, part of it is that Ancestry ended up being acquired by a private equity fund before me and all the other co-founders were able to take it public. So you kind of have an unmet need, like going public, ringing the bell, having publicly traded shares. That's still my dream. And actually, I'm excited about Eric Ries's long-term stock exchange. He's an advisor to my company, SOAR. And obviously he wrote Lean Startup, and millions of people learned how to be doing MVPs and doing lean and customer development interviews, all the stuff that Eric taught people about building product and getting product market fit. Well, now he's inviting the world to help good companies stay good by going public eventually on the long-term stock exchange. So I won't go into too much detail there, but I just have an unfinished mission to try to build good companies that help humans in every part of life, not just family or faith, but also civics, work, health, finance, legal. In every area of life, humans could benefit from knowledge and AI. And so we are building a dozen or more portfolio companies, and we really want to go public on the long-term stock exchange someday so that the values and mission of our company stay intact. But one of the common denominators between Ancestry and SOAR is that public domain content is freely available. It's like open source software. Anybody in the world can go get public domain content or open source software and refine it and make it more useful and create a product that they can sell. So I love the Creative Commons. I love public domain. I love open source software. And now open source AI could empower billions of humans with unprecedented intelligence to help them navigate life, make money, plan your life, learn things, go to events, preserve the things that you cherish and remember and are valuable to you. So AI has this unprecedented possibility. But if it's controlled and owned by a handful of trillion-dollar companies, and if we're all just leasing access to that intelligence, the world could end up being, rich get richer, and the middle and poor class gets bigger and bigger. So I really believe in decentralized and distributed intelligence. And so I feel like SOAR is on a pretty important mission to join forces with other open source, decentralized platforms and try to push the advantages and benefits of AI to billions of people on their edge devices so that they get to design it, deploy it, run it, and benefit from it. And so I just feel like I'm super grateful to be alive right now. Living in the 90s was insanely fun, and I couldn't sleep. I had a high-speed satellite dish, and I was like learning about all the internet companies in the 97, 98, 99 time period. And then, because the bubble burst, and that was pretty painful for a lot of people. But I just think it's a great time to be alive. It's a fantastic time to be a builder, and using AI every day is a joy. And you can just imagine what is possible in the world of work and in the world of human experience, how many incredible things could be brought into existence with AI.
Yeah. So is SOAR, you said you're building portfolio companies. Are you bringing in entrepreneurs that have ideas and you're kind of bringing them under the SOAR umbrella? Are you buying businesses almost like a VC or private equity firm? Like, what's the structure and the vision for SOAR?
It's pretty flexible, but we started out with 12 verticals where we know humans, they spend a lot of time in these areas. Like one of our examples is citizenportal.ai is using the public domain playbook to transcribe every public meeting in the United States and help every American citizen get a personalized news feed about what your elected officials are doing at every level of government. And so we decided from our leadership team on these 12 verticals. And legal is one, finance, health. These are really big categories. And of course, there's millions of people playing in those spaces. But our vision is to take public domain content, open source technology, and then to find channel partners who are best in class. There are people out there who know how to help people live healthy lives. And so, the future's here already. It's just not distributed very evenly. But if there's people that figure out how you could live 10 years longer or prevent or postpone Alzheimer's or prevent diabetes, or all these things. The knowledge is there in a few in a few people's minds or in a few labs. It doesn't get spread across the masses of humans. And so the vision for each of our vertical companies is to find some channel partners who have extraordinary content, find entrepreneurs who have subject matter expertise, and then provide funding and tools and technology to help them get to market quicker, and then penetrate that market as much as possible through our brand channel partners. So we have some amazing partners. We have some big customers. We have a lot of investors, over 550 investors. And we're just forming our 8th company shortly with a fantastic venture-backed CEO with multiple exits. He's got a patent portfolio. He's phenomenal. And he will run our education portal. And so it's a combination of what do we bring from the inside, and then who our partners and our talent will be to bring this mission forward to fruition.
Is there an accelerator or incubator kind of component to it where you bring in entrepreneurs that, obviously it sounds like the ones you back are more successful than kind of more maybe a first-time entrepreneur? Like, is there that kind of formula? Because there, a lot of VCs some of them have incubators, or they're affiliated with incubators because obviously they want to have the path or the first right of refusal to any kind of the cream of the crop when it comes to the talent coming out of those accelerators. So how do you think about supporting both the incubation of ideas within SOAR, and then obviously post launch of the business? Obviously, you're financially invested, so you want to support them as they grow, I'm assuming.
We're a little different. We don't yet bring in cohorts of people with their own ideas. We've thought about that. We might do that, but we have these big verticals, and we have 24 SOAR advisory board members that are handpicked, some of the smartest people on earth in regards to leadership, coaching, education, finance, health. And so we have advisory board members, and then we use our networks to find the executives who will run the various businesses. And SOAR is the majority owner in each of the companies until, of course, enough funding rounds happen, or until the company gets acquired. We have a big merger coming with one of our portals, and we're pretty excited about it because we're a growth engine for this company, and they're a data lake with a moat that we really need. And so we're just excited. It's fun to have a dozen horses that are currently or soon will be in the race. And then we're looking for talent and partners and funding in each case. We do some seed funding for each portal. And then we also have done crowdfunding successfully multiple times. We love Start Engine, WeFunder, Dealmaker, these crowdfunding platforms that allow non-accredited investors to invest $500, $1,000, $5,000. And I think $5 billion have been raised on the SEC-approved crowdfunding platforms since 2016. So we're a big fan of democratizing access to deal flow, and crowdfunding will continue to be a big part of what we do at SOAR.
Yeah, I like the access because I grew up in a very, very rural town in Pennsylvania, and the investing advice that I always got was just get a good job, invest your 401k, and hope you've got enough money when you retire, right? And so I think that and obviously crowdfunding necessarily didn't exist back when I was super young, but it is kind of an interesting avenue for people to get access to investments that they probably didn't think were accessible to them, right? You always hear accredited investor, and the ability to get to that accredited level for some people is unachievable, definitely in at least their current lifestyle. So I do think it opens up a lot of doors to people that maybe didn't think they have access to being able to invest in an early stage company that they're very passionate about or excited about. You mentioned a couple verticals. Education was one, the citizen portal, which I think is interesting. So you're essentially taking all publicly available meeting notes from like state and local government, right? I'm assuming is kind of the theory.
And federal.
And federal. And then you're kind of taking that information and I guess synthesizing it so that somebody that, maybe moved to an area or maybe wants to get more involved in their local community can like actually see what's going on in government versus hearing about it on the news and hearing a snippet of it.
We have a big plan to index every government document at the state and local level, and to create a personalized news feed that is relevant to each citizen. You're not interested in every single topic at your city, your county, and your state, but there are some topics that really affect you, and you need to know when they're being discussed and debated, and you need to know when bills are passed that are positive and helpful, and then when there's bad policy that has negative consequences, those should be overwritten. They should be recanted and outvoted. So the thing is, the data is out there, but it's in a million places. So if you can compile it all, just like Ancestry.com is 80 billion records now from 100 plus countries. And like almost anyone in the world can find the needles in the haystack, and AI will help you find the next one, the next one, the next one. So it's very similar to the motion we built Ancestry.com with. We're finding every government unit and where do they post their videos, their minutes, their proposals, their bills. We have AI now that can aggregate and analyze all of these things. And so we actually think it's possible in the United States of America, which is a democratic constitutional republic, to have intelligence at our fingertips. There is a scenario where a new age of good governance could be ushered in for the next 250 years of our country, where AI helps us avoid all the stupidities and inefficient and corrupt things of the past. And with transparency and data and predictive analytics, there's a really good path where almost every program that's voted on in the country could be based on a successful playbook. And if you're studying the laboratories of democracy, tens of thousands of government units that tried different things for different reasons, health related, communication, transportation, education, public safety, criminal justice, all those things, there are programs that work extraordinarily well, and they never spread from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So we want to increase efficiency, of course, and get rid of any insider dealings and things like that. Make a citizenry that's a super intelligent, all-knowing citizenry, because all the data is there. And then people should show up and make their voice heard. But more importantly, when there's a genius aha moment, a eureka moment, where, like, for example, 5 coaches in Tarrant County, social workers who were StrengthsFinder coaches in Tarrant County, Texas, they created a unique formula to help ex-offenders get back on their feet. They called this the Next Step program. They got some state funding, some federal funding, and then they used the Gallup StrengthsFinder assessment to help these ex-offenders find a way to believe in themselves again for the first time after 1 to 30 years in prison. And they did coaching of the individual, coaching of the hiring manager. They subsidized employment for 2 to 4 months. And they have had one of the most successful reentry programs in the history of the United States. Has that spread to any other county, the 3,143 other counties? No. Why not? Because data is isolated. People are in silos. They don't talk to the other counties all across the country. They might go to a conference once in a while. But the thing is, AI and data at our fingertips could help every elected official find the programs that worked incredibly well and try to replicate them and adapt them to their local use. Think about education. Think about charter schools or high schools or even some inner city schools that have incredible recipes and very dedicated people. I know in Omaha, Nebraska, or in Lincoln, Nebraska, there's a school that a lot of disadvantaged kids go to. They have a higher graduation rate and a higher college placement rate than any other public school because they've got a formula that's unique, that helps people believe in themselves, that there's mentoring programs. There's ways to unlock human potential that are working in silos. They need to work everywhere. And it's just an uninformed citizenry and uninformed electeds that just continue to do mediocre or average programs when there are, in fact, excellent programs that we could learn from and adapt and copy. And so I think that Citizen Portal has a big role in the next 10 years to help tens of millions of American citizens and our 550,000 elected officials to use intelligence and data for the first time in the history of governance.
I can tell you're passionate about this because you definitely exude it, which I love. And it does seem a little frustrating that, yes, something that is working well in one area is not replicated in others, right? And I think, so at this point with Citizen Portal, where are you at in the growth phase of that company, in that mission? Is it just a matter of trying to find where all of the data is buried and then try to get it into an AI to synthesize and then, start to tease out the positives? Where are you at and where do we go from here for that?
We started 3 years ago. We did a little angel round of about 425,000. Then Glenn Beck found out about it. He put me in his studio in Dallas and we got a huge video view. 560,000 people viewed that 33-minute interview, and we crowdfunded 1.3 million. Now we're in the middle of a $3 million safe round, but the data's all there mostly, And now we're generating articles. We'll probably generate on average about 10 million news articles a year that are factual based on government meetings and documents. But now we're in merger conversations with a much bigger company that has way more data about historical government outcomes from cities. So we will get big fast through mergers and acquisitions. And we're actually hoping to do a huge round in the coming months with this combined new entity. So Citizen Portal, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it is I was a Russian major in college. I wanted to be a Kremlinologist. Why? Because I can't stand centrally planned economies that pretend that they can make the decisions for an entire country and govern wisely and well. The free market, with tens of millions of people making their own choices and interacting with each other in the free market, creating goods and buying goods and services, that is amazing because millions of people are making decisions every day. Central planning, the Soviet Union had a 5-year economic plan every 5 years since the Bolshevik Revolution. And it was the laughing stock of the world because you can't just sit there with 12 people in the Politburo or the Central Committee and decide about roads and manufacturing and how many of these to make and groceries and newsprint. And so there were shortages all the time because central planning doesn't work. Well, our country has become centrally planned. Much of the economy, with a multi-trillion-dollar federal budget, they're deciding how much goes into education and healthcare, and the finance sector is so regulated. I have a billionaire friend who tried to charter a bank in 2009 and 10 after the financial crisis. For 3 years, the FDIC would not charter, or the banking regulators wouldn't let a billionaire start a community bank to help his neighbors. He was forced by our government to buy a failing bank and turn it around. And he did, but it cost us 3 or 4 years of economic growth. The banking sector is so centrally controlled. The healthcare sector is so centrally controlled. The finance and energy and education sector are so centrally controlled. What we need is to plant 1,000 seeds and see what blooms and then find what works and spread it across the laboratories of democracy. So yes, I'm pretty passionate about this because what does central control end up with? It ends up with mass starvation and suffering. You can't centrally plan government doing everything. What you need is millions of independent sovereign people acting in their best interest and serving their neighbor and creating value for each other. So I'm a big fan of our Western civilization path to prosperity. And I fear like we are slowly but surely becoming so regulated and so centrally controlled. In Missouri, where I live, I've heard that farmers can't grow cucumbers and pickle them and sell pickles to their neighbors. It's illegal. Okay, are we a free country if you can't grow cucumbers, pickle them, and sell them because there's some kind of regulations or filings or the FDA or some federal program that says, no, you can't do that. You'll be arrested if you sell pickles to your neighbors in a jar.
Wow. Yeah, there is a lot of regulation for regulation's sake, it feels like, and that's probably more of a simplified way to say it. So I want to kind of pivot a little bit because we're talking a lot about open source technology, open source information, for lack of a better way to say it, and combining it with AI. So I'm curious, kind of as somebody that has been a multi-time successful founder, you've grown up in the dot-com boom and bust and then, revolution, and now we're in the AI sector. So how are you looking at AI as a founder? I'm talking about it more as a business builder, a business founder. Obviously, you're using it to help you gather and synthesize, mounds and mounds of data. But as somebody that would be listening to this, that they're a founder maybe of a small business and they're like, I feel like I'm doing too many things. How are you leveraging AI to kind of make your life, your job a little bit more easier? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, about 4 months ago, we kind of told everyone in the company that you need to become 10x productive by using AI, such as Twin or Manus or any of the other, OpenClaw-like agentic frameworks. And so we've invested a lot in training our 40 employees on how to use, we especially like Twin out of France, to take any workflow that you do regularly and just codify it and then run it on a cron job every day. So I actually think it's quite important that all human workers realize that you're not going to be replaced by AI, but you'll be replaced by humans who are using AI every day who can outcompete you 10 to 1. And so I really don't want to lay off anyone. I really want to keep my people and invest in training them so that they can all become 10x productive. But one of the things we're doing is we have an AI company called Workplace, and it does note taking, call recording, like Grain, Otter, Fathom, Fireflies, all the great ones. But what we do is we take everything you talk about in every meeting every day, and after 30 days of recording all your content, everything you talk about, you commit to, people assign you things, and we design a fleet of AI agents for you specifically for your job in that company, using the vocabulary, using MCP and APIs to integrate with your company system. So after every meeting, the 5 or 6 things you've been assigned to do get done for you by your fleet of agents. We think that humans who can speak and communicate or type and message can all run a fleet of AI agents, and it's like a superpower. And there's almost no reason why anybody can't be taught how to do it. And you go into our dashboard after a call or a meeting, and the AIs have raised their hand saying, I'll do this, 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 and this for you. Now, there's a token cost, of course, and we want to keep that affordable. But as open source gets better and better, the token usage will go down. Your fleet of agents might operate on a local LLM on your own Spark drive or something. And so I think there's just a real opportunity in this moment in human history to take 1 billion workers, to give them a dedicated hardware and AI open source, and then design a fleet of agents around what they talk about every day in every meeting. So I think we're doing a lot to empower companies to bring up all of their employees to speed on how to run a fleet of agents. And my favorite part is you message your agents through Telegram or WhatsApp. You don't have to log into the dashboard after every meeting, but you have this. If you have the ability to message anyone, which billions of people are using WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, and other messaging app like Facebook Messenger, if you can do that, you can actually run a fleet of AI agents. Most people would say, I don't know what my agents should do. Well, that's why you sign up for workplace-ai.com, record your calls and meetings for 30 days, and the fleet of agents is designed for you, and you look through it and say, oh, wow, I wouldn't have thought of that. But all the stuff you're supposed to do and that you commit to do is now being monitored and then activated on by your fleet of agents. It's not going to be perfect every time, but you can adjust the instructions to your agents, and over time, the agents will get better and better. Pretty soon, you'll say, okay, do that autonomously. You've never gotten it wrong. And pretty soon you'll have a bunch of assistants working for you full time around the clock. So if you apply that at work, then everybody could be way more successful at work. If you apply a fleet of agents to your personal health, it'd be like having 10 PhDs doing nothing but optimizing your personal health, your diet, your exercise, your sleep, medications, consultations with your physicians. What tests should you take? What wearables should you wear? What sensors should you have so that you can optimize your health and live maybe 5 or 10 years longer than you would otherwise? But what about your financial health? The same thing applies. Everyone needs a fleet of agents to help them spend less money, make more money, invest more prudently, and have that retirement nest egg that you talked about. AI could be supercharged to help you in every part of your life, including your hobbies and interests and collecting and traveling and your social calendar. And I just think we are just at the very beginning stages of humans being able to optimize their life and the joy they feel in life by having dozens or hundreds of AI agents behind the scenes pointing out things that they would have otherwise missed. Now, I think humans are more important than AI, and I want human first AI, and I want AI to be subservient to us, to our desires and our wishes and our goals and our visions and our missions for our life. And I think AI and robots could potentially, take over if corporations deploy them that way. But I don't believe that that's how it should be done. And I think we just need millions of people designing it in the distributed, decentralized way so that all of us get maximal benefit and none of the downsides of being advertised to by the trillion-dollar companies that own and control social media and AI.
Yeah, I was talking to a founder who came on the podcast, and he had built a business 10 years ago, did some other things, and he built a second business 2 years ago, but with AI literally at the front of it. He was like, I'm going to build an AI first company with that in mind. And one thing I thought was interesting that he commented, he's like, if I would have built this company 5 years ago, he had 30 employees. He would have said he would have had to have 60, 80 employees to build the same business without AI. So I know a lot of people are talking about we're not firing people because of AI. All the layoffs in these mass tech companies that are saying it's AI, it's really not usually AI. It is just they overhired during the 2021, 2022 phase, and this is a good excuse. However, you just said it right there of like, if I could take my core 40 employees, make them 10 times more efficient, you won't have to hire as many people. And so if this is replicated over dozens and hundreds and thousands of companies, if they would have had to hire 5 less people, well, those are 5 less people or 5 people that need to find a job. And so I think about, because I'm in the recruiting game, I think about people that I've helped hire, that their job is now being super powered by AI, by somebody else, maybe at a middle-level manager that's doing it. Maybe they wouldn't have to hire more people. So do we get to this point where if all companies are AI efficient, are we going to not need to hire as many people? Ipso facto, we're going to have mass unemployment because a 20-person company can do what a 100-person company could do 5 years ago.
I don't believe that will happen at all. I think Connor Boyack, who's a libertarian, he's a brilliant guy. He's creator of the Tuttle Twins. When one of the doomsdayer economists came out and said mass unemployment is certain because all the foundational model companies are saying we're going to have to, lay off all these people, Connor Boyack basically went back through hundreds of years of history and proved that every economist who ever forecast a doomsday scenario was not only wrong, but completely wrong, because humans are ingenious and adaptable. And if you listen to the All In podcast, those besties that are actually using AI all the time, they can't hire enough people who are AI proficient because they can now grow. And so even though 40 of my people might become 10x employees, I'll be hiring a lot more people who are like them. So I think the message to the recruiting industry and to those that are in the workforce worried about losing their job, and those that are coming out of college where the job placement rates are really abysmal for new graduates, there's real data on that front. But if you learn how to use agents, 5 or 10 agents, and then if you go to an employer who will hire you with your agents and then give you a chance to increase your wages because now you're a 10x employee, I think this is the first time in the history of capitalism where labor and capital don't have to be at great odds with each other. Capital can say, yeah, we want to hire people, but labor can say, well, I have a device and I have AI agents, so I'm actually, I kind of have capital too. I've got the means of production. I've got my own brain, my own hands, and I've got 10 AI agents that do sales, marketing, scheduling, event planning, outreach, financial forecasting like a PhD does. And so everybody needs to get their own fleet. And then what we need is thousands of workplaces to say, I want to hire individual humans who have a fleet. I will let them bring their fleet in. I'll pay them twice as much as I might have paid them otherwise, or 20% more, whatever. And then when they leave my employee, let's do a Men in Black kind of light flash to wipe the memory. All it is markdown files. You just take your agents with you minus the markdown files and the context from the company's data sets. You just wipe it out. You do an auditing tool that says, okay, Justin gets to take his fleet with him. There are 10 company-owned agents that he was running that we're not going to give back to him, but his own agents, his chief of staff, his, kind of his own G-stack, whatever Gary Tan inspired you to do, your Hermes fleet or whatever, you should own that. And as you used them at work, they got smarter during the 5 years you worked for me. And then when you leave to go start your own company, you keep your agents with you. So labor and capital end up being kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have a slight concern for the new grads that are coming out, because a lot of the entry level or the first out of college jobs are the ones that are the meeting schedulers, the data entry, all those things that are being AI-ified. And I don't have the data on it, but that's the challenge I think we have is all the entry level jobs that we all got out of college because it was just like the crap that nobody else wanted to do. All that crap is being done by a bot now.
Well, it'll get worse because robots will do physical work. And so, but the option exists for those people that are having a hard time as recent college grads to get a job to go watch YouTube videos and learn how to deploy OpenClaw or Hermes or any other agentic framework and start building your own Shopify, build your own company, see if you can, like my friend John Chaney, who built a business in a weekend and made $168,000 in 6 weeks. And now he's doing like 10 million ARR a year later. You can be entrepreneurial. I was never entrepreneurial growing up. I thought my mom was a teacher. My dad was a professor. I thought the only good career was academia. And it took me a few years to actually embrace the fact that I'm a business guy. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to come up with an idea and I'm going to go build it. Well, millions of people or billions of people can decide anything. You can go build anything with AI, market it with AI, sell it with AI, do the financing and the legal filings with AI. You still need advisors at some point when you're scaling, but it is unprecedented in human history that people don't have to sit around waiting for someone to hire them. You can take initiative. You have autonomy and agency. You have talents. And if you can watch YouTube videos and follow the recipe, you can be a super productive human in no time. And then everybody will want to hire you, but you probably won't want to go work for them because you're hiring other people to scale your own business.
I do think it's interesting. I hadn't thought about the whole team-based hiring approach because, back in the days, a couple of years ago, you may go pluck a team out of your competitor, right? And that means sales, marketing, whatever. Where now, if you come as hey, I have a team of agents that I've built and I want to bring them to work with me to your company. I think that's actually kind of fascinating. I hadn't really thought about that.
Check out a Substack I wrote. So my daughter is a famous, very well received author. She's an award-winning author, and she's my ghostwriter and my collaborator on my Substack. So I published a blog for like 13 years, but now she actually writes better than I do. So we talk all the time. I give her ideas, but she wrote a Substack article at paulallenai.substack.com. I think it was back in April. And it was a futuristic interview with an Accenture recruiter in 2030 in their Chicago headquarters, 26th floor. And hiring managers didn't want to ask the person about their career, their resume. They wanted to ask them about their fleet. Tell us about your fleet. And this interviewee had 25 agents that had been training for 3 or 4 years. And I really do think that futuristic piece, that essay about future jobs is accurate. And that there will be a lot of people making a lot of money because they get hired with their fleet of agents. And now they have superhuman capacity to plug into a company. But again, they should own their agents on exit. Other than the corporate data that should never leak out. And so we're going to try to start a global movement around this. And we really do love the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I was always ashamed of being a business guy until I go to Philadelphia in 1996 in May. We made the Inc. 500. We were the 455th fastest growing company. We barely made the Inc. 500, but I'm there for a few days in Philadelphia with hundreds of the coolest people I'd ever met in my life. Like these fast growing companies. I'm like, these are awesome people, high energy. They have vision. They're creating value. They're hiring everybody else. And so I'm like, what's wrong with being an entrepreneur? Nothing. It's a great calling in life. It's not a lower caste. It's actually one of the best ways to change the world. And so I love entrepreneurship, but I also know that most people don't ever think outside the box. They think like your parents did, just go get a college education, get a job, and hope you save enough money for retirement. Well, that's not necessary. You can actually have side gigs. You can do gig economy things, but now you can have AI agents that are working around the clock for you. So I actually think everybody probably needs to save up a few $1,000s to buy a Spark from NVIDIA or one of the new AMD chips where you can actually run a 600 or 800 billion parameter open source model like GLM 5.2. And you could have a whole team of agents helping you with your business, with your finances, with your health. This is going to happen, but more and more people need to know it's not that big of a leap to do it.
Yeah, no, we could drive down this rabbit hole even deeper than we already have. Because I think one of the biggest companies or industries I think that's coming up right now are all these small businesses. They know they need to do something with AI, but they're at the point where they're like, it's too late. They think it's too late. I've missed the boat. And so I've actually met a few people that are now, they're calling themselves AI consultants, but really what they're doing is going into these mom and pop shop, $1 to $5 million companies. And they are sitting with the owners and the founding teams and saying, let me learn about your business. Kind of sounds like what your AI does, and says, let me learn about your business. Let me sit down and we'll map out some workflows. And then I'm going to pick the top 2 or 3. And then we're going to build an agent around that. And they almost like walk them, almost like a consultant, but actually doing the work. And I find that super fascinating because there's so many people that are entrepreneurs that just don't have the time. And it sounds like your tool actually could be interesting because it kind of sits in the background.
Well, the thing is, those consultants, it's really smart for them to go in and watch and observe and document. But they could also private label our AI fleet tool, and they could turn on call recordings so that all the meetings that happen when they're not there. It's important for people to be there on site with the business owners and see how things work. I think that's great. But they could contact our team. We're going to have hundreds of private label call recording tools. It's in your brand. You turn it on for your small business clients or your enterprise clients. And in addition to your consulting where you build AI workflows, you're recording all their calls and meetings internally, all their support calls, all their sales calls, and you actually use AI to spin up the fleet of agents. So it's a really cool combination. And those consultants you're talking about should definitely reach out to SOAR and to Workplace, our subsidiary, and find out about how we could partner and do rev shares together.
Yeah, we'll talk in the green room after this about that. We'll chat. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time up. This has been amazing. I could probably talk for another 2 hours about Ancestry, and we really only scratched the surface of that. But I do want to wrap up the same way that I do every episode, Paul. So we got a 3-pack of questions that I'll fire at you here. So first question is, what is an influential book that you might recommend that you found super helpful?
My favorite book for human development, and I go back to it all the time, is a paperback book from 1992 called Soar with Your Strengths. The reason we picked the name soar.com is that Don Clifton, who invented StrengthsFinder, he created the entire field of strengths-based psychology, which is focusing on what's right with people rather than on what's wrong with them. There's a lot of things wrong with all of us. And if you look in the DSM, there's tens of thousands of things that could be wrong with you. But Don said, well, wouldn't it be better if we focused on what's right with each person? So I love Don Clifton's work, Soar with Your Strengths, fantastic, easy read. It talks about how you could live your life around your strengths and unlock your potential. But I also have to give a shout out to Eric Ries's new book, Incorruptible. Eric, as I said, is one of my advisors. This is the book that will introduce millions of people to the concept that capitalism and quarterly earnings pressures don't need to ruin great companies. You can have a great mission in a capitalistic society where your values are intact if you go public on the long-term stock exchange, where there's a 5-year investment thesis for your institutional and retail investors. Anyway, I love Eric Ries's new book. I'm telling everyone I know in finance and accounting, you got to read this book and get involved in this whole concept of eliminating short-term thinking with how corporations are run.
Love it. Love it. I'll have to check that out for sure. Is it available? Can people just buy it on Amazon or anywhere?
It came out about 3 weeks ago.
Perfect. Brilliant.
New York Times bestseller already.
Love it. Love it. All right. Second question here. What is your favorite thing to do outside of work?
I have 6 grandkids and I have 8 kids. And anytime I can get together, I was at the swimming pool the other day with a couple of my grandkids. I've got a few coming out to visit in July. I just love hanging out with my family. I got to go see my dad for Father's Day with some of my siblings. And so it's just family time. I love running. I love basketball. I love watching sports, but family time is the most important thing for me at this age.
Awesome. Last question here. Favorite vacation spot?
Well, you caught me at Outer Banks, North Carolina. We have our East Coast family. I have some really amazing relatives in Virginia and Maryland, and we like to do a week at Outer Banks every year. I lived in North Carolina for a couple years when I was younger. So Outer Banks, North Carolina, love it. I love the family time there, and we're going to try to do that every year until I can't do it anymore.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I was telling you when you were on the beach, I went there once as a kid. So I know about duck, and I think Nag's Head was another one that I remember. So Paul, man, it's been really fun to get to know you and learn more about your journey and Ancestry and SOAR and all of that. If people want to reach out and learn more about you, maybe talk to you about some of the work you've got going on there with SOAR, what's the best way to connect with you?
My email is paul@soar.com, SOAR. I'm not really great at email, but you can also follow me on LinkedIn. I've got, I think, 45,000 followers. I've got 30,000 connections. I can't really take any more, but my new Substack, paulallenai.substack.com, I'm trying to publish 2 or 3 times a week about the future positive aspects of how AI could benefit all humanity in every area of life. And as we articulate our vision, then our development team actually starts using those articles, those essays, to prompt the AI to do some agentic engineering. So it's kind of fun how writing these days can predict what coding gets done next, and then sales and marketing is inspired by that. And so it's all kind of part of a chain. But I'd love to hear from people, especially if they're an AI consultant and they want to learn about how to take this platform to record calls and meetings and help everyone they know spin up a fleet of AI agents to help them all become 10x productive.
Awesome. Paul, really appreciate you being on the podcast. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Justin.
I hope you found at least one actionable insight from this episode of the Growth Capital Podcast, your one-stop shop for insights from private equity leaders, CEOs, and startup entrepreneurs on starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, as well as the role having the right talent plays in growing a successful business. It would be greatly appreciated if you would rate and review this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and drop us a comment so we can expand the audience of this podcast. Thank you for all your support, and don't forget about upcoming episodes dropping every Tuesday.